Welcome to the Temple of Geek podcast. My name is Danielle, and I will be your host as we share our thoughts on the second episode of the second season of HBO's The Last of Us. This is the second of 7 weekly episodes as my co-host Olivia and I share our thoughts as the second season airs. If you haven't watched The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2, save this episode for later and come back because there will be spoilers, and you really don't want to be spoiled for this one. However, if you haven't played The Last of Us Part 2 video game, don't worry. As usual, the first section of this episode will be spoiler-free for Part 2, and will clearly state when we're about to venture into spoiler territory, so you can get out of here if you've not played the game and don't want to be spoiled for the rest of the season. If this is your first time tuning into the Temple of Geek podcast, welcome. The podcast has been around since 2012 and is hosted by various geeks from the Temple of Geek team. Here we cover all manner of geek and pop culture news and events. To our returning listeners, thank you again for tuning in. We really appreciate you being here. As a reminder, if you want to follow us elsewhere and see even more thoughts about The Last of Us and other media, you can find me on TikTok at Written in the Star Wars, and Olivia.
You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Olivia Lupe Marie.
Perfect. All right. First, I want to show off our shirts that we got for this. Olivia has Ellie on hers, and it says, "You can't stop this." Game players will know. Yes, there she is. Look at her. And I have Abby. I have Abby on mine, and it says, "You don't get to rush this." If you've seen the episode, you know that line. So, sorry, everybody. Maybe not the best shirt, but she looks really beautiful.
She looks great. Yes, she looks great.
Okay, so let's get this thing started. Olivia, are you ready?
I'm ready, as I'll ever be. Yes.
So the title of this episode is Through the Valley, which is the name of a song, which becomes very important that we'll talk about later. The general summary of this is, as a storm brews in the mountains, the people of Jackson Hole prepare for the worst amid increased sightings of infected. Meanwhile, Abby weighs her options. The full summary is we start the episode with Abby's nightmare about finding her dad. And then we go to the group just outside of Jackson. They're trying to figure out how to find Joel, if it's even feasible to find him without getting themselves killed. Abby is still very determined. Her friends, not so much. It's clear that they're about to give up, and most of them want to return back to where they came from. When Abby, on watch, sees 2 people on horses coming from Jackson, she goes after them herself. She gets attacked by a horde of infected, is saved by Joel. Luck for her, not so lucky for him, who brings her to safety with him and Dina. Abby leads them back to her group at the house. Meanwhile, Jesse and Ellie go on patrol, are sidetracked by a blizzard, hole up in Eugene's hideout, still there, slightly different, but still there, and they get word that Joel and Dina have not checked in with Jackson. They split up to go look for them. Meanwhile, Jackson is facing a horde of infected who breach the walls of Jackson Hole. Many people die after a big kind of like Battle of Winterfell. Olivia, you called it. We get to see Tommy use a flamethrower against a big daddy bloater. And back at the Firefly group's house, Abby's group put Dina to sleep, and Abby tells Joel who she is during a long, really well done monologue. Then she beats him to near death, first with the infamous golf club, then with her hands. This is when Ellie finds him. She's brought down before she can attack them and has to watch as Abby deals the final blow to Joel with the broken off club stabbed through his neck. The group leave after incapacitating Ellie when she declares that she will kill all of them. And after they leave, Ellie is only able to crawl to Joel and rest her head against his. As Ashley Johnson's version of the song Through the Valley plays, we see Abby's group walk away, Jackson dealing with the aftermath of the breach, and Jesse taking Ellie, Dina, and Joel's body back to Jackson. So that took an effort for me to not cry.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Okay, so this first section again is spoiler free for the game. So we're going to try and not say anything that happens in the game during this section. But as usual, Olivia, what were your initial thoughts?
I think it was probably one of the best pieces of television I've seen in a very long time. As devastating and really uncomfortable as it was brilliantly done. Brilliant. Even with all the changes from the game. I loved it. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm much the same. There even with the changes, like you said, I think that those changes added a lot to the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I would have changed it back for the
Mm-mm.
show anyway. Like, I'll
Yeah.
always love the way it's done in the game, but for the purposes of the show and where they're going with it, I really did enjoy is a hard word, but but they did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is there anything that you like especially liked? Obviously, you clearly loved this episode, but
Yeah.
any highlights?
I really liked, I'm going to call it the Battle of Jackson, very much like the Battle of Winterfell type of vibes. I
Mm-hmm.
really liked that. I think I kept thinking throughout it, I was like, I really hope they release this as like an afterplay thing for the game. You know, how like what is it called? I forgot what it's called
DLC.
for a DLC. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was like, this would be very fun to experience as a game player. I think that was just such a great addition to the Last of Us franchise. It was so not fun to watch. It was really, really, really scary.
Mm-hmm.
Was very unsure what was going to happen, who was going to survive, if
Yeah.
Jackson was going to survive at all. But yeah, that was absolutely my favorite part. What about you?
I God, I really loved that as well. I think though that my favorite part, it's hard to call this my favorite part because it absolutely wrenched my guts out. Um, was the end where Ellie crawls to Joel
Oh,
and
yeah.
puts her head on his. That this isn't a spoiler. That doesn't happen in the game. That particular part, Ellie crawling to
Mm-mm.
him. They actually knock her out, and like I don't think that doesn't spoil anything for you, but for
No.
if people haven't played, but yeah, they knock her out, and she she doesn't get like that final moment with him, I guess, and that was just so beautifully done by Bella
Yeah.
Ramsey. Their
Incredible.
acting just God, I don't know. They're just so phenomenal. Every time there are moments, Olivia and I have talked about this before. There are moments where they're just so Ellie that it astounds me sometimes that I forget that it's almost like there's no difference sometimes between them and Ashley Johnson's Ellie.
Yeah.
And I love that. But it's still with Bella making it their own.
Yeah.
And I just love that so much. And so that scene I think was a change from the game, but it really added a lot to it and it made it even more visceral and real, I think. And just to show how shocked Ellie is that this has happened and just absolutely devastated. So that was my favorite. Not really, but it is. Was there anything you didn't like? It didn't sound like it, but
I, I will say the one thing I didn't like, though it makes sense for the changes for this episode, I still love when Dina and Ellie get to go on patrol together,
mm,
and they stumble upon Eugene's weed, garden or whatever, and they have their moment.
mm-hmm,
And we didn't get that in the show. It's with Jesse instead,
mm-hmm,
which is a super minor thing because essentially the heart of it is the same as the
yeah,
game, but I still do wish that we could just have more Ellie and Dina in
mm-hmm.
this episode. But again, a small thing, but that was it for me.
Yeah, I did have some moments where I was like, oh, I would have liked to have those moments between Dina and Ellie. I'm
Yeah.
wondering though, like depending on how things go, I'm not going to spoil what's coming, but I wonder if we could still get those moments just different places.
Yeah, probably. I think
We can
so.
talk about that in section 2 too,
Yeah.
about what I think might happen there. I had some hesitations at first about Abby's monologue.
Mm.
Just because I don't know, there was like I liked it. I thought Caitlin Deaver did an excellent job on it, and I think like as I've sat with the episode for like the past 20 minutes or whatever, I think I'm growing to like it more, and I probably will like it more on a rewatch when I rewatch it later today. Um, but I don't know, it's something about like explaining everything to Joel just kind of felt like I don't know. It was so different from the game because she doesn't
Yeah.
really get a chance to
Mm-mm.
and for a minute I was kind of like, oh, she's gonna make Joel feel bad about what he did, and he's gonna, like, accept what she's doing to him. But then they had the moment where he was like, where he actually did say the line, like, just get it over with.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that made it a little bit more okay. But I was kind of unsure about it, just because it's again revealing so much about her
yeah,
so soon, which again I guess is what they're trying to do with the show, and that's fine. But yeah, it wasn't
yeah.
really like a dislike, just kind of a hesitation, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I felt similarly at the beginning. And then, if you guys don't know, there is an HBO official podcast about the show, and I listened to the first episode about the first episode, and they talked about the changes with Abby's introduction, and it's because we get to learn about Abby and experience Abby's state of mind as we're playing her, and we don't get that in the show. We don't get to play a character. And so they said that they decided to tell Abby's story off the bat because it's just a different medium. And so as the monologue was happening, I was like, okay, this feels a little bit info dumping a little
Mhm.
bit for Abby's character, and I wish there was the mystery, but I kind of understood why they were doing it, because we don't get to experience and learn about Abby through Abby, playing her like we do in the game. And so it seems like they just want to get all this information out right away. And as I'm watching the show with my mom, who hasn't played the game, I could see the impact of really Abby rubbing it in Joel's face had on someone who hadn't experienced the game and didn't get to learn Abby's story in the way that we do in the game. So I think for new audience members, new fans of the show and the story, I think it makes sense. But as a game player, I completely agree. It was like, oh, but like we don't get the mystery of Abby at all. It's
Yeah.
just all out on the table.
Yeah. I think I'm still adjusting, and we'll talk more about this in section 2 as well. But I'm still adjusting to accepting the fact that I think for me, The Last of Us Part 2 will always be one of the best told stories ever,
Mm-hmm.
like the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that feeling, I don't think will ever translate for me fully to television,
Yeah. Yeah.
at least for the same story.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
but it can be still effective, and that doesn't mean that I won't like it or that I won't enjoy it. But I think I'm still like coming to terms with the fact that like the game will always be it for me, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the show can be a close second. So I'm trying to, like, I think with each episode kind of just like manage my expectations with that. Again, nothing against the show. I think that they've done an excellent job so far with adapting it for television.
Yeah.
It's just I need to have my own like expectations. Like some stories are told. It was kind of like a once in a, not lifetime, but you know what I mean, Olivia.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it feels the same with like book to movie adaptations, like
Mm-hmm.
the heart of the story can stay the same, which I think is what they're doing so far. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. But in terms of the execution, like there has to be changes. And when a story is told so perfectly in one medium, it's like you don't want anything to change. So
Yeah,
I completely agree. I still prefer the way the game does it, but
yeah,
I think what they're doing for TV, I think is working so far.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
so far, fingers crossed, it
yeah.
continues this way.
Yeah. We still have 5 more episodes this season.
Yeah, still a lot to
Yeah,
come, lots more to happen.
I know. Yay. Okay, so as we do each week, we have a standout character or actor of the week, or both. For me, I guess I'll go first. For me, I think it has to be. I'm torn between Caitlin Dever as Abby and Bella Ramsey's Ellie, because God, and I think that just speaks to how good they are doing with, because these are
Yeah,
the two characters that should be the standouts for a lot of
yeah,
this season. And the fact that they were for this episode of all of them was probably necessary for them to be the ones that we are paying the most attention to. um I think I would go with Caitlin Dever for
mm-hmm.
me,
Yeah,
for Abby, because
yeah,
the more I think about it, the more that monologue is kind of growing on me, and just the way that her facial acting is. I still do really wish that Abby's physical bulk was there, I don't think that that wish is ever going to go away, really. But I feel the absence of it, I think, is what I'm
Yes.
saying. But that is greatly lessened by Caitlin Deaver's acting, her own like facial acting and everything. And that monologue really was expertly delivered by her. And the way she handled Joel and Pedro was just truly she is a professional, and you can see it in this.
Yeah. Yeah, just absolutely phenomenal. The intensity that we get with Abby's physical appearance, I feel, is still there through the way that she
Mm-hmm.
acts. You know, like
Yeah.
this woman is formidable. She's terrifying. Even though she's like this, she's not even just like small. She's like short, especially when she's standing
Yeah.
next to everyone else. I'm like, oh, that is a small person.
Yeah.
But she still has this insane presence on screen in such an intensity that while yes, I totally agree, I miss the physical aspect. I'm still like, okay, this is a good casting choice. You know, like this,
Yeah.
she just brings that emotional intensity that Abby needs. But for me, for the character, I mean, it would definitely be between Abby and Ellie for sure. But I want to give
Yeah.
an honorary mention to Tommy because
Oh
my
yes.
boy really did shine in this episode, and I
He
was
did.
very afraid for him. I was
Yeah.
very scared. I was like, oh my god. Um, and this is not a spoiler, but when you fight a bloater or a shambler, I can't tell the difference on screen for the TV show, so I don't know which one that was. But like when you're fighting them with a flamethrower, you were praying to God that they eventually start to burn as they continue to come at you, and then all of a sudden they just actually kind of die.
Yeah.
So I started laughing at that moment because I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it's like in the game. Because you're like, I hope this works because I'm out of fuel. So I thought that was terrifying and very funny. Again, another wonderful, kind of nod to the gameplay, which
Mm-hmm.
I eat up every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fun.
I agree. I was feeling the same way. I think I have the notes where I said, what was it? Tommy, oh, fighting the bloater. He. I know. Because it is the same. Like you literally like I think maybe some people might think that the bloater just collapsing was a bit anticlimactic, but that really is how it is in the game.
It's so funny.
Eventually you just praying, is this enough? Is this enough? Is this enough? And it finally just falls and you're like, oh thank God.
You're like, I'm out of fuel, I'm out of ammo.
Yeah.
Oh
Um
man.
Speaking of Tommy and the whole like I feel like this is a good time to talk about the Battle of Winterfell, Battle of Jackson.
Yes.
Um because I wasn't necessarily afraid for Tommy because
Okay.
of reasons that we can't talk
Yes.
about.
Yes.
But I was afraid for Maria.
Yes.
I was
Oh
so
God.
worried that they were going to have her die and I was going to be so mad.
I would have been so pissed. I'm happy she's well. She's fine. Thank God.
Oh, thank God. But no, I thought the way that they handled all of that was really well done. It was because I have always wanted to see what it would be like for Jackson to be attacked. We hear about it in
Yeah.
the games. Tommy mentions, I think, in part one when Joel first finds him that they've had to deal with raiders infected and they
Mm-hmm.
have a whole system in place, but you never really get to see it. And so it was fun to see that they have like the thing for the barrels of oil and that they have protocols in place for people to go down to the basements, barricade themselves. And I thought that seeing just how smart they're being with everything was was really good, and it's a testament to show like how Jackson has been able to survive this long.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because we see an outside perspective with the WLF. When they see the whole
Mm-hmm.
city, they're like, wow, that they're impressed by what these people are able to accomplish. And like you said, it's a testament to like how prepared they are with the systems they have in place, because it would be difficult to survive in this world for many reasons. And one reason we never get to see in the game is like, well, what happens when there's a large? I mean, they're not a spoiler, but there are hordes in the game. We do see hordes of infected, but we don't get to see it in that capacity and what happens when they attack a community, a town. So I thought that was really fun. I mean, it was terrifying. It was really scary because it's not part of the game, so you don't know how it's going to end. But
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely something extra in the world building that I really enjoyed seeing.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was really interesting that they showed the when Tommy sees that there's going to be a breach and
Yeah.
he runs to get the flamethrower pack on. there were 3 other men with him. And as the horde is coming towards them, 2 of them run off.
Yeah,
And
that was
Tommy's like,
insane.
"What the hell?" but he didn't yell. Like, he didn't yell at them. Obviously his focus is somewhere else, but normally I think you would expect someone to be like, "Oh, you fucking coward." Sorry.
Yeah.
you you would expect someone to be like, "Oh, you cowards." And I
Yeah.
did kind of feel that, but also I think it was very human, a very
Mm-hmm.
like, actually, if this horde of hundreds of infected are running towards you, and all you have is just a flamethrower that is eventually going to run out of oxygen, um, I can't say that I wouldn't run either. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And so that was really interesting to me. I just like all the different responses that it showed for that.
Yeah. And in the game, when there are hordes of infected, the game tells you, because I die every time. I always die the first couple times to get like all turned around and stuff. There'll be like advice on what to do. They're like, just run away. Don't try and fight them. Just run. So I was like, you know what? Maybe a little nod to the game, but also like, yeah, sometimes it's the best thing to do. It's a human instinct to just run and
Mm.
hide, and you can't really fault anyone for that. But there was one moment towards the end of the episode when I don't know who it was, but someone got bit, and
Mm-hmm.
and Jackson, and he hands his gun to another member of Jackson. That, so there is still bravery, because that takes bravery, even though they know they're going to die or
Yeah.
become infected. But to admit that you've been bitten and to hand over your gun and say, please mercy kill me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was just like you said, it's interesting seeing all the different responses to being in that situation.
Yeah. I loved that scene. Um,
Yeah.
that whole montage with Through the Valley in the background was excellent. It was an excellent way to end the episode, and just to show like they're in the aftermath now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Abby is going to be in the aftermath. Jackson's going to be in the aftermath. Ellie is going to be in the aftermath of this, and I think that was just really beautiful. I also loved. It's kind of going a little bit off track, but I loved that when Through the Valley started. So for those of you who don't know, Ashley Johnson sings this song. Or does a version of this song, which is the one that we hear in this game or in this episode, and she recorded it specifically for the Last of Us Part 2 album, and for the teaser, the first teaser that came out for The Last of Us Part 2. And this song is essentially meant for Ellie. It's meant to be, like what is coming for Ellie and her state of mind for the rest of this story. But I loved that when it started, we're on Abby walking away,
Mm-hmm.
and like, this is because we've talked before about how Abby and Ellie are essentially experiencing the same story or the same experiences at different points.
Mm-hmm.
um, Abby is slightly ahead on hers, and so this song very much applies to her just as much as it does Ellie. And I'd never thought of it that way before, until seeing it kind of put on Abby's face during that song. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
I didn't realize that Ashley Johnson sang that song for the album, and that
Yeah.
was her version singing. I was like, this voice sounds
Yeah.
very familiar, and I don't know why, but that
It's Ellie.
another beautiful that's beautiful. Another beautiful tie-in to the game. And
Yeah.
also, yeah, like you said, the fact that it starts on Abby, because
Mm-hmm.
this is, yeah, her journey is has ended in one capacity, but is
Mm-hmm.
also just beginning in
Yeah.
another, without
Yeah.
spoiling anything.
Okay, Cry Tracker.
The entire time. I'm sorry, but the entire time I couldn't stop.
I, I've been a little worried that I wasn't gonna be able to cry because I cry so much in the game that, again, I don't know, kind of getting used to the fact that the show's version of the story might not affect me the same way that the game, because the game does so much, the game version. And it's especially in a different way than it does with part one and season one. But I lost it as soon as Abby shot Joel in the knee. I was crying.
Oh, it hurt
Um,
too. Ooh, to watch
yeah,
that. Ow.
and I think it's also because I realized with that this was going to be at least as brutal as the game, and that was what I wanted. And so I think I could kind of like be like, okay, this is gonna hit me, and it did. when Ellie shows up, I was full on sobbing and noises were coming out of me. And I really lost it there, and I just cried all the way through the end until the end and had to like quickly pull myself together. I was like taking notes while I'm sobbing and trying to do that. But yeah, you said you cried pretty much the whole time. What was the most intense, do you think?
When Ellie was crawling to Joel,
Yeah.
that part just absolutely wrecked me because,
Yeah.
like you said at the beginning, we don't get that in the game. They knock her out and it cuts to
Mm-hmm.
black. And as they were walking away, I was like, "Oh, they're not going to knock out Ellie." I was like, "Oh no!" And just like, just that, I don't know, just like that moment between the two of them, even though Joel's dead at this point,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the last time we're going to see them together.
Yeah.
I just started sobbing, and then of course, as Jesse, Ellie, and Dina are riding to a burning Jackson, and we see Joel's body being
Mm-hmm.
dragged, because we also don't see them take Joel's body back to
Yeah.
Jackson, and it's just like a nail in the coffin, essentially. Just like, yep,
Yeah.
he's gone. But one part that did make me cry, which was so random, was when they let the dogs out of the kennels to go and defend them.
Yeah.
And the dogs just like totally attack all those clickers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Something about the relationship of like man and dog, or like
Yeah.
man and animal, and how like even from the beginning of time, and now even in the apocalypse, like we have that special connection with dogs. It's
Yeah.
this mutually beneficial thing. And I just think of all the dogs that probably died. I don't know, I get really emotional anytime there's an animal on screen and the animal
Yeah.
has potential to be harmed, but also
Yeah.
just that special connection between human and animal.
Yeah.
And it's not a spoiler for the game, but dogs do play an important part of part 2 in the game, so that was also a
Yeah.
wonderful nod to the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Um, when you mentioned when they were bringing Joel's body back to Jackson,
Yeah.
Ellie turning around and watching it.
Yep.
And I was sorry. I no, that got me too, just because it was just like a moment of her really being kind of like, he's still there, he's still there, this still happened, but also not wanting him to be alone, I feel like. And God, that was just that hit me. And I want to like, we haven't talked about him a lot, but Jesse, played in the
Mm-hmm.
show by young Mazzino, he was excellent this episode, and he is the reason why I'm not totally upset that we don't get that patrol between Dina and Ellie the way we do in the game,
Yeah.
because it really does add a lot to his and Ellie's relationship and to kind of who he is as a character, and the fact that he had to hold it together because it's just him getting two living people and one dead person back to Jackson.
Oh,
And he is just
yes.
very like, you could tell it affected him too, but he has to hold it together. He has to be the
Yeah.
responsible adult here because Dina is half knocked out. Ellie is completely not there. And
Yeah.
someone he really admired, it just died.
Yeah.
And so I just like also want to acknowledge that, because excellent character work, really by everybody this episode,
Yeah.
but especially the ones I think that we've mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that last scene it's brutal, just so brutal. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what are we looking forward to next week without any spoilers?
Not any spoilers. Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking forward to the rest of it. I don't know. It's hard. I remember feeling this way when I played the game when Joel
Mhm.
died. I was like, I don't know if I can continue playing this. And it's like, I don't know if I want to see the rest of the story unfold. And even though I know it's supposed to happen and I love the rest of the story, I think I'm just at a point still where I'm just like, how do we even move forward from this? How does Ellie move forward from this?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, in a sad way, I'm interested to see how Tommy reacts to learning about
Yeah.
Joel's death. Because it's different in the game for Tommy. Tommy has a different relationship to what happened to Joel. And I'm interested to see how he reacts, and also how Jackson begins to rebuild and heal after the bombardment of the horde. What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I think the same for me. One thing I noted when it comes to Tommy this episode is that I didn't so much mind the change with him for this
Mm-mm.
because it really allowed us to see him stressing over Joel's safety for once instead
Yeah.
of the opposite, which it was usually, I think, their entire lives, Joel stressing over Tommy's safety. And in season one, we saw obviously part of Joel's goal was to make sure that his brother was still alive and get him out of trouble if he needed to. And so he was stressing about Tommy, and now we see kind of the roles reversed. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to show right before Joel dies. Like
Yeah.
the one time Tommy has to be concerned about him is the one time he absolutely should have been concerned about him. And
Yeah.
and that I think is gonna will likely have like ramifications with how he reacts. Because I can imagine like God, just the guilt he might feel, and like that he wasn't there for him, and I think that Joel has existed maybe so long in his mind as someone who is untouchable,
Mm-hmm.
and this like that's his big brother, and
Yeah.
he's always been there to protect him, and now he's not, and I think that that's going to be heartbreaking to watch the
Yeah.
aftermath of that.
Yeah, he's just going to blame himself, even though, because he was on his way to go try and find him when
Yeah,
the infected attacked, and then he had to defend his home.
yeah.
Yeah, poor Tommy.
I know it's gonna be
Mm,
interesting. So I'm really
yeah,
excited for Gabriel Luna though to be able to. It's nice to see him have this role
yeah,
that well, he'll be able to bring so much to it emotionally. I think, and
yeah,
so I'm excited for that.
yeah. Me too.
Okay, great. So that ends our section one, the non spoiler section. We are now moving into spoiler territory. So if you haven't played part two and you don't want to know what happens in that game, what will likely come in the rest of season two, then please leave. Thank you for joining us. We will be back next week with episode three. So return then if you want to. We'd love it. Now please leave. Okay. All right. So I think for both of us, there wasn't as much weariness about the changes this episode as there
Mm-mm.
was last week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and they changed a lot this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
A ton, and that's so interesting too, because you'd think that we'd be really wary about it, but yeah, they changed a ton, which is insane, and I still think it worked. Like it was different. It was different from the game. The events unfolded differently from the game, but the heart of it and the emotionalness of it hit me just as hard as it did in the game. So I think that they still got to the heart of it, the point of it, very, very well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I don't remember if I said this during our episode last week or to you after separately, but I only had three requirements for this episode. And that was all revolving around Joel's death. I
Yeah.
think I had like Ellie needed to see it,
Mm-hmm.
it needed to be brutal, and it needed to be because of Abby.
Yeah.
And they kept all of that. So
They did. Yep. They hit all those
so I
points.
was like, that's what I said. That's what I needed it to be, and they followed through with that. And so yeah, so the changes I don't mind at all. I think there was
Mm-mm.
initially when I realized that she was going on patrol with Jesse and not Tommy, not Dina. I was a little bit like, oh, damn it, we're losing that. But then as it went on, I was like, okay, no, I actually like this again. Jesse is just such a good character, and I really feel like we didn't get to spend as much time as I wanted with him in the game.
Yeah.
And the moments we did in Seattle were all really fun, and so I'm glad that we got to see him and Ellie interact before so many things change for Ellie.
Yeah, I agree. And I do wonder, like, with the change of Jesse being there and Tommy not being there,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wonder if maybe instead of just Dina and Ellie going out to Seattle, it's actually going to be the four of them right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jesse comes a little later, and so does Tommy. They're actually going out to go find Tommy And I'm kind of wondering if maybe they're setting it up so that all four of them will actually go and try and find the WLF together. Because now they all have real reason to. Dina initially was going because, she liked Joel, but she loves Ellie.
Yeah.
Now we know that she has a stronger connection with Joel, or had one. Jesse was also kind of there as it was happening. And then Tommy is going to maybe feel more sense of guilt than he did in the game. And that might be a bigger motivator for all of them to go. So yeah, I'm just wondering if maybe they're setting it up for the journey to be a little different.
Yeah. I just remembered this change when Jesse goes to pick Ellie up at her house to remind her about Patrol. And he's like, "You're coming with me." And she was like, "No, thanks. I'd rather go with Joel."
Yeah.
That change, I was like, oh, that made it so much more brutal, because I thought it was a really good way to explain to people who haven't played the game that Ellie was ready to move on without giving away the porch scene that we know there's likely going to be the flashback of. And so it's like it made it feel like it did in the game whenever she's like, "No, we're fine," to Maria, and then she tells Dina that they're gonna watch the movie, or she's gonna invite him to watch the movie afterwards. And so I thought that was a really good way to kind of be like, hey, regardless of what happened last episode, Ellie's ready to move on. By the way, she's not going to get to. and I loved that. I would have loved to see them on patrol together. We didn't get that.
It's sad, but like you said, like the changes we did get were still good. They were, even small moments like that, and just makes it more sad. Oh my God, I can't believe he's gone.
I know. God, I thought it was
It just
interesting.
never gets easier.
I know. I thought it was really interesting that they changed that final blow to a stab.
Me too.
And
I was like, ooh.
Yeah, because on one hand it's more brutal, but it's also not. And I liked it because when she picked up the broken off golf club, because it's broken off because she hit him so hard so many times with it that it broke in half. I thought that said a lot about her anger. It really showed kind of like the physicality of that. But then I also was just kind of like, that is such, I don't know, it was such an interesting change, and I liked it, but I also was like, interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder why. That was my initial reaction too, because it was still a final blow, and it was still the golf club in some sense. But like, why the change, and what does it mean exactly? Like, because they're both brutal in different ways, but and what was really hard was seeing Ellie pull it out of him. That was really, really difficult to see. Just like, I don't know, there's some desperation of like, if I take this out, maybe he's going to be okay. And, obviously like he's gone by that point. I mean, another small change. I don't know if you caught this or if I'm just was making this up in my head, but when she's yelling at Joel, like, get up, and you see Pedro Pascal's like hands, like try and get him up a little bit. I was like, oh my God, he's like trying. And we don't see that in the game. In the game, he's like, I think he's pretty much brain dead at that point. He's like really gone. But there's just a little bit of life left in that we see in the show. Just like all those little small changes just broke my heart. Just made it more intense. And I didn't think it could get more intense. I wanted them to like recreate it shot for shot. And they essentially did. I would say like 98% was the same, but those little additions just like, oh my God, intense.
Yeah. I think in the game he like moves a finger. But it's just barely, like he can't do any more than that. But so to see Pedro try to push himself up, like he really,
for Ellie, God, he would, like I feel like if Ellie had not been there, he'd be like, I'm done, because he kind of resigns to the fact, like, I'm gonna die, like, you get it over with, I'm done. And he's like that in the game too. But as soon as Ellie walks into that room, like that's his reason for living. What is Frank, and what does Bill say to Frank, or Frank say to Bill in the letter about like, you're my reason for living, or you're my purpose?
Find your purpose. You are my
like,
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, Ellie is Joel's purpose, and
Ellie is
that
Joel's
just was like
purpose.
that last little moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, still fighting for his
Yeah.
purpose. It just
And I
kills
think
me.
what kills me a lot about that scene too, from like Joel's perspective, is, and it's like this in the game, and it's also now like this in the show, is that I really believe that Joel thought that he was so afraid that she was going to die too.
Yeah,
And that I think he didn't, in those moments, didn't even care about himself. As soon as he saw Ellie there, he was like, I can't let her die.
yeah.
But he can't save her.
Mm-mm.
And it's only ironically by the grace of Abby's, some of Abby's group, that Ellie isn't killed. And I just, yeah, I love that. I love that scene and I hate it so much. God.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about Abby's group? Because there were
Yeah.
just a couple of different moments, like
Mm-hmm.
additions with her group, particularly with Manny and Mel,
Mm-hmm.
that I really, really loved. Obviously in the game, we get to hear through conversations with Mel and Abby how uncomfortable Mel was with everything that went on, and it
Yeah.
causes a rift between them. But really seeing Mel struggle, she's crying, she's trying to comfort Dina before she freaking knocks her out. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can just really see the internal struggle that Mel is going through. And on the opposite side, you really see Manny like into what's happening, and he's
Yeah.
like so supportive of Abby. And actually, funny enough, one of my favorite friendships in the game is actually Manny and Abby's. I
Yeah.
really enjoy their friendship. But this like painted Manny in a different way for me. I was like,
Mm.
ooh, he's like loving this a little too much. But I really liked how it kind of sets up the divide that we're going to see with that friend group, because they
Yeah.
go back to Seattle and things are not the same
Yeah.
from when they left. So I just
Yeah.
loved that. So good.
It's funny you say that about Manny because obviously, I come to love Abby. I come to really, really, I come to really love Owen, and
Yeah.
I love Mel as much as she pisses me off sometimes in the game. I do like her. I'm kind of like, whatever about Nora.
Yeah.
Um, but Manny, I never. I do love Manny. I do love him, but I can never get over. I don't know if he did it in the show, but I know he says. Calls Joel pendejo still in the show, but in the game he also spits on him,
Yes. Yeah. I didn't see him
and
spit on him.
that I can never forgive.
He's
I can
nasty.
forgive,
Yeah.
and I think the thing for me about all of that, like why I can forgive Abby, maybe not forgive her, but I can move on from it with her and not so much with Manny, is that Abby's dad was killed. Joel killed her dad,
Yeah.
and I feel like her reaction is very understandable, very like emotional, and something that I can relate to. I can't relate to why Manny feels the way he does, and I don't think that
Nope.
there is a comparable reason for him as there is for
Mm-mm.
Abby. And so, as much as I come to love his and Abby's relationship, I just can never, even in the game, I just, every time it happens, I'm just like, I can't forgive you. You didn't have to do that. Like, it's one thing to kill him, it's another to spit on him and call him a pendejo.
The disrespect.
Yeah, he's already dead. What more do you want from him?
What are you doing? Yeah. Yeah. And he just, everyone has agreed early on that like no one else gets hurt.
Yeah.
And he's like, as soon as Ellie, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think she did this in the game, but in the show, she just cuts him with a knife. He's like after her blood, Yeah, there's something interesting about that man. And I'll be interested to see if Danny Ramirez plays him as this like playful,
Mm-hmm.
flirty character when we see them in Seattle through Abby's
Yeah.
perspective, or if it's gonna be a little bit more cold and hard. And because like, yeah, he gives her a look in this episode. I was like, ooh, you're a scary man. You're scary.
Yeah. Um, and to like go off of that, because I think they're combining him and Jordan. So Jordan
Yes,
in the
that's who it
game,
is.
yeah, yeah. So in the game, there's two other characters in Abby's group, Jordan, and I can never remember her name because we don't really see her a lot.
It's
But
the photograph girl, right?
yeah, yeah, but I can
Yeah, I
never
can't remember her
remember her
name
name.
either.
But
Oops.
they're dating. Her and Jordan are a couple. And in the game, Jordan's supposed to be on watch while Abby is beating Joel to death, and he's not. But he is the one that Abby ends up slicing across the cheek with a knife, and then he's the one who calls her profanity and wants to kill her. And so I think the consequence of not having Jordan and the other woman is that you have to kind of put some of those into the characters that you do have. And so Manny was the really the only other option. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that changes things, not having Jordan, not having those two characters, because those are the first two that Ellie goes after in when she gets to Seattle. So yeah, that'll change. I actually hadn't thought about them not being in there because we obviously don't see them in at the very beginning of episode 1 when we first see Abby and them. So
interesting. I'll be interested to see what they change, particularly in day 1 Seattle with Ellie, because a lot of it is like getting through those stupid gates and finding gas to get like the motors running and things, or generators running and stuff. So yeah, it'll be, again, a small thing, but like with now that those two characters are not there and Abby and Dina aren't going to go after them, like will there be other little changes too? So
yeah, I could see them doing like one gate, but not as many as we have to do in the game.
There's like 2 or 3, and you have to go through all these little buildings, the courthouse and stuff.
Find the codes.
Find the codes.
Try to remember them.
I don't remember the codes.
Okay, so what do we think will happen next week based on the game, now that we can talk about spoilers?
I think there's going to be discussion about going after the WLF and versus staying back to help Jackson rebuild. Obviously Ellie and Dina are going to go off. I doubt they would change that. But I'll be interested to see how the rest of the crew reacts, because we know in the game that Maria really didn't want Tommy to go off, but Tommy leaves before Ellie and Dina. So I think there might be some confrontation there, some discussion there. And I think we're actually probably going to see Joel's funeral. We don't get to see that in the game, but I bet we're going to see a funeral, and it's going to be very disturbing and upsetting.
Before I give mine, there was one thing that we forgot to talk about, and that was the mention of Eugene.
Oh, Eugene, yes.
Yes, really quickly. So we do still get his weed.
Weed farm. I loved that. And the bong mask too. That was so funny.
I love that, like hot masking. But when Jesse brings up Eugene now, and Ellie has a moment where she's like, he says Eugene's name, and her face like reacts. And so I think it's pretty clear that she knows what happened with Eugene and Joel, and that there's something that we've not been told. But she didn't know. What we now know is that she didn't know he was a Firefly. So regardless of what she knows happened with him and Joel, she did not know that Eugene was a Firefly until this moment in the 7-Eleven weed farm. Which is an insane string of words to put together. And so I really am intrigued by what went down there, and we're gonna see it presumably in a flashback. Well, obviously it has to be a flashback. But it adds even more to it. So if she knows what happened there, but she didn't know Eugene was a Firefly, then I don't know. I could see things of her thinking like, Joel hasn't told me everything again, even though she's ready to move on.
Yeah, I think so. I think she knows, I assume, we don't know this for sure, that Eugene was infected, which is why Joel had to kill him. And I think Ellie probably knows that he wasn't actually infected, but she probably doesn't know why he had to kill Eugene. And when she learns that he's a Firefly, she's probably putting 2 and 2 together, that Eugene found out about her immunity or already knew what happened in Salt Lake. But yeah, I'm excited to see that flashback. I mean, if we get it, I hope we do, because I'm very, very intrigued by Eugene's story in a way that I wasn't in the game. Because after the first part, I don't even really think about Eugene. He doesn't play any kind of importance to the rest of the story. But it seems like they're setting up for the rest of the show that he will. So
Yeah. And I think Jesse said that he left the Fireflies in 2010,
Yes, yeah, that's what he said.
which I believe would have been 13 years earlier than season one. So
Yes.
17
Yeah.
years
Yeah, 22,
earlier
3,
than season
yeah.
two. Yeah. Which is interesting because also, did he have any contact with them? Did he know clearly, like you were saying? So I guess we're going to find out
Yeah.
eventually, maybe. Who knows? His story's still a bit of a mystery in the game, so I don't know if they'll give us like any more enlightenment on that. Probably, I assume.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to that. So what I think will happen next week is I do think that we are going to see some sort of memorial or funeral for Joel. We're going to get to see, I believe, Tommy's reaction, which we don't really get in the game, and so I'm looking forward to that. What else do I think? I do wonder if they're gonna hit the like really hit have Ellie and Dina, maybe Jesse if he joins them to begin with, really like kind of like hit the road immediately, or if they're
Mm.
gonna take an episode to kind of breathe and show the kind of aftermath of everything. Because one thing that I think is gonna really add to Tommy leaving, assuming that he does in the show, is that there is rebuilding that needs to be done in Jackson. And I can definitely see him being like, I want to go after them to kind of get rid of his own guilt. And Maria being like, hey, we have a town that needs to be rebuilt. You are one of the leaders of this town. You can't leave. And he's going to leave anyway. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested to see how the necessary rebuilding efforts of Jackson is going to add to that complication between him and Maria.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I was thinking the same thing because, they get divorced at the end of the game. We find out that they separate. Um, and it seems like Maria and Tommy in the show are much closer. They have a much
Mm.
healthier relationship than they do in the game. At least that's
Mm-hmm.
how it comes across to me. And so I was like, I wonder how they're going to make these two get a divorce or if they won't get a divorce at all. But I could see, like you said, Tommy leaving despite his town needing to be rebuilt. And that really causes a divide between the two of them that they really
Mm-hmm.
can't, they can't fix. Because, he's either choosing Maria and his community or he's choosing his brother. And
Yeah.
we know Maria has a contentious relationship with Joel, so I could see that really separating the two of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially since he's a father now too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing how how that how that goes. Good luck, Tommy. Okay, that wraps up this episode of the Temple of Geek podcast. But before we sign off, just a reminder where you can find us on social media. I'm Written in the Star Wars on TikTok, DannyS394 on Twitter, and Written in the SW on Blue Sky and Instagram. Olivia?
You can find me on Instagram and on TikTok at Olivia Lupe Marie.
Great. We want to thank everyone who tuned in today, especially our guests for listening to us yap for the past hour. But don't forget that we will be back. We will be back next week, even, to discuss episode 3 of The Last of Us season 2. As usual, you'll find me being absolutely sick with excitement and anxiety about it for the next week, and making probably lots of videos on TikTok. So look out for those.
Yes.
In the meantime, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to hit us up on Blue Sky or TikTok by using the handle Temple of Geek. We post clips of this there as well. And if you want to check out some of our other episodes or shows, head over to templeofgeek.com where you'll find all sorts of content that pertains to the world of geek. I also write review articles for each episode. So if you want to check that out, I'd be really grateful because it takes a lot of work. So
And they're really good.
Oh, thank you. We hope you'll join us next week. But until then, always remember that if you're lost in the darkness, you just got to look for the light, even if it's hard because Joel's dead. Sorry.
Bye, Joel. R.I.P.
R.I.P. to the man.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.